Well, everyone, it looks like Marathon actually may get the delay that we all kind of know that it needs. This is coming from Forbes, Paul Tassi, and also Colin Moriarty on Sacred Symbols podcast he has. He was told, quote, I was told by somebody familiar with the marketing campaigns and marketing plans in a key overseas market that there are now no plans to do paid marketing for Marathon at all. I don't know if those plans were affected by what has recently happened or if that was always the plan or whatever, but it is considered a fairly unusual move for a game of this high profile. Paul continues, this tracks somewhat with what I was told a little while back, though he's getting info on the Sony side. He's trustworthy. Well, I'm getting it on the Bungie side. I heard the entire marketing plan was thrown out and had to restart from scratch, and plans like a new trailer and launching pre-orders and a big public beta about a month before launch were not happening. I didn't hear anything about all paid media or marketing being erased, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's where things ended up. There's now talk about whether this means Marathon is delayed or even canceled after its disastrous couple of weeks. Delayed, I'm almost positive yes. Canceled, it's hard to see how that could happen given that it would be Sony's second obscene live service blow up in a year. That's true. Isn't this insane? If they ended up canceling Marathon, let's say next week they announce a cancellation, it would be the second euthanasia of a monstrosity live service game in less than 12 months. That's insane. That's crazy. But that's how much money that they've just burned on this, you know? Like, it's unbelievable, but that's where they are. And you have to wonder, like, at what point does the pride of the company affect these decisions? For them to be like, we can't screw this up again. Less than a year ago, we had Concord, and you're telling me that like, what are we doing? What are we doing? This isn't Sony's game. Bungie's publishing Sony, or Bungie's publishing. The problem is Sony owns them, so ultimately they foot the bill when things go sour. So, you know, if Bungie needs an extra $100 million to make payroll for the next quarter, guess who has to pay for it? You know, Daddy Sony. There's no getting around it. It might just be that, like, oh, Bungie's books look really bad, but ultimately Bungie's books are a part of Sony's books, and so it ends up being the same. It's just whose name you put on it first, you know? So, I mean, I'm inclined to think that they just delay it. I can't imagine that they just scrap it entirely, but they might have data internally that's more worrisome. You never know. I think it'd be surprising if they canceled it before doing a public play test. I think if they do the public play test and they can't get more than like 5,000 players, yeah, at that point, the writing's on the wall. But prior to a play test, I'd be surprised. I'd be really surprised. Blowing up a game on the launch pad this close to release with years and hundreds of millions of dollars invested would be insanity. It's close to what happened with Concord, yes, but the difference here is that this is Bungie, not just a storied shooter studio, but one that Sony paid an absurdly overpriced $3.6 billion for. I still don't know how on earth they got to the 3 point, and bear in mind, they offered 3.6. That was the announced price. After they closed the deal, they came out and revised the number. So saying that it was close to the 3.7 after they adjusted everything at closing. So either way, they spent billions on a company that has returned almost nothing and potentially actually nothing. We know that they've missed revenue targets. We know that they've lost money on Destiny for a long time. They've had some good periods where they have an expansion or something for Destiny 2 that does really well. But the analyst estimation is that Bungie's been losing money consistently for years. And so they may at this point be in the whole $4 billion, maybe more total on Bungie. And this is what they're hoping can justify the expense, but it's crazy. Paul goes on, you can't cancel it now. It's too late. You have to roll the dice. But to do that, you need at least some sort of delay to reset the narrative and polish and add, I don't know, something to the game to make it more of a draw at launch. A delay is what I think this marketing hold means, because you're not going to bother spooling up a big ad campaign for a game that isn't coming out until when? Sometime in 2026 from the looks of all of this. I've been on the delay marathon train before, and I still think it's the least worst option. But my position has also evolved into thinking it simply does not matter. Marathon's problems are too foundational. A class-based extraction game entirely unbalanced for solo play, not accessible enough for casual, and not hardcore enough for existing genre players. Oh, and its cool art style, was the one thing it had going for it. You can't talk about that without saying plagiarism in the same sentence, no matter how few decals have been stolen. The marketing spend pull isn't a shock, but I get how it certainly sounds like that. The writing has been pretty clear on the walls since the alpha that this is not a game that can be released in 4 months, and it's not just because of some visual polish. Still, I have not heard anything internally about a delay or cancellation, though those conversations are probably happening only at the top levels. But if Sony is making this move now, some public news may be imminent. Almost certainly the conversations are happening. And what we do know is that Hiroki Totoki, new head honcho over at Sony, is not afraid of canceling stuff. He is okay with doing it if he thinks that it's going to lessen the pain in the long run. And he canceled plenty of live service games. They may be having a conversation with this, just being like, okay, realistically, what are the odds of this popping off and finding success? I personally don't. I try, whenever we talk about this stuff, I try to like play it out in my mind's eye. I try to think of a situation like, okay, play it out. What would this being successful look like? Like, at what point does Marathon click and go viral and do really, really well? And I'm like, well, it needs a lot more content, a lot more features. That means a big delay. And even then, it's like, how does it overcome the negativity right now? Because like we talk about Marathon, but I can only imagine like trying to boot it up as a more regular streamer. You're like, oh, I'm going to set aside Warzone right now. I'm going to play Marathon for a week or two, see how it goes. Your chat's going to be flooded with all sorts of stuff about the art controversy, about the lack of content, about, how the ranked mode's coming months after launch, all of that. I just don't see it. And it's too bad, because I don't think what I played with Marathon, like I didn't think it was bad. I just thought it wasn't ready for a premium price tag or for competing in the broader market. But for like 10, 15 hours, whatever I put into the Marathon playtest that they had, like I had a fun time. It's not something I would replace in my regular day-to-day life. It's not something I would like be booting up every chance I can get. It's not something I would be getting my friends to pay $50 a pop for. But I played it. I'm like, yeah, it was fun. It's just not fun enough to justify the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars they're spending on it. And I don't know how they could get there with just like a 6-month delay or a year delay. I just personally don't see it. But as for the other problems, like even a solo queue, which I think could help the game, people have been like, oh, well, why doesn't people like Joe Ziegler, the game director, why doesn't he talk about that more often? Why doesn't he discuss how they could add that in? If they had a delay, if they had more time, they could do that, or maybe they'll add it post-launch. I think it's just fundamentally the problem is the way the game is set up. It doesn't really click that well in that way to just allow solo queues. Because just think of it. If you're playing like solo Apex Legends, what's going to happen? There's going to be a meta for which characters are best. There's going to be a meta. Maybe it's Valkyrie. Maybe it's, what's the name of the one with the little bat owl thing that she can send it out and then zip to it. She's got the sniper rifle. High mobility characters could really, really help. And that might be the meta. And then everybody plays that one character. Everybody plays stealth. Everybody does this or that. And it removes all dynamics, because that's what happens when you have a hero class-based game, as opposed to just everybody starting from scratch with the same stuff. And that's what they said happened. The game devs were asked at the preview event I went to about a solo queue, and they said the reason we don't do it is because we tested it internally. We let people solo queue and we saw what happened. And what happened was everybody just played stealth. Everybody went and played Void, popped invisibility, and crawled around the map. Nobody wanted to engage, and it was really boring. And I think the same thing would happen here. Like, yeah, you would give people the option to go solo queue and to pick which characters they want, but almost certainly everybody would be picking the same characters, because the meta would be very, very clear cut. And in extraction shooters, it's not about just fun experimentation. The stakes are super high. You cannot afford to mess it up. You can't afford to lose your stuff. And so I just think it just doesn't work. You know, the way that it's set up, it doesn't work for solo queues. And so it's an only team-based extraction shooter. And as of right now, there's just not enough content to make that work. And the ranked mode could help because you could always be guaranteed to get in with capable, teammates. But that's something coming after launch. That's wild. They understood the problem, and instead of fixing it, they just stuck with it. Well, I mean, realistically, what's the solution? You get rid of the characters, the heroes, and you go back to the way the game originally was, allegedly before Joe Ziegler came in. Because you remember, he came in like 2022, I believe, and he rebooted the game into this hero-based shooter because he worked on Valorant, and that's his previous experience is Valorant, which of course is hero-based as well. But like I think as part of him coming in is, he said, I only want to come in if I can go hero-based. It's probably the pitch he gave them was, you should let me be the new game director because I'm going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to take a hero and we're going to do that. So they understood the problem, but it was too late to fix anything and change it. And they might have decided, hey, it's not even worth risking the change. It doesn't make sense. But they won't. The entire goal of the game is to sell skins. Hero-based games sell the most skins. I mean, that is also a major, major component of this. And I do agree that that's a huge piece of it. And I think it's naive to pretend that it's not. Because almost certainly part of the idea, and they even had a name for it, they said they were going to call them shells. So for just like in this cinematic they had, they're going to have different shells where you can pay $20, you get a new shell for your runner, and you play through the game with that new shell, and that's how they can make money. That's all fine and dandy, but the game itself has to be good. And it's the danger also when you start to motivate gameplay choices based on monetization instead of just on like what makes the most sense for the game itself. So I do think we'll probably hear about a delay. I would imagine in the next week or two, we probably hear something before we hit Summer Games Fest and everything like that. Maybe they delay it in the middle of Summer Games Fest, like in the middle of all the other news, so it gets buried. Maybe they do that. But I do think they delay it. I'd be shocked if they cancel it. I just don't think that makes sense. Because if they cancel it, what does Bungie have? Like, they've got Destiny 2. That's not getting any more profitable. That's not making any more money, than it is right now. So what do they do? Like at that point, I don't see how Bungie in its current form stays alive. Like I think the odds of a Sony closure and tax write-off become very, very high. It's just, and I'm sure that's the debate they're making right now is that Hiroki Totoki, he's looking at it and he's like, we could cancel it, but he has to answer then to shareholders, why did you just buy a company for $3.7 billion and then shut them down and cancel them? And how did you make that mistake? And he has the added benefit of, it was the guy before me, or technically it was the guy before the guy that's in the position right now as CEO of PlayStation. But Hiroki Totoki came in as the new CFO. The previous CFO, the previous CEO, they all would have to answer for this Bungie acquisition. And I don't know how they could do that. Because, you got to think of it from a perspective of the perspective of an investor too. The investors have given Sony billions of dollars of their own money, and Sony went and squandered it on this. How would you feel if you invested in your buddy's company and then he blew it all on buying a new tool that has nothing to do with what he was doing before and is broken already and had the worst reviews on Amazon? Like my buddy comes to me, hey, can you invest in my construction business? Sure. Here's $1,000 or whatever. And then he goes and spends it on the worst rated, I don't know, new set of tires or something for his truck. And then they wear out within a day and a half and he has to get them replaced again. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, what? I gave you that money and you just burned it? I'd be pissed. And that's going to happen here too. But at some point, the writing's on the wall. And if Bungie is totally incapable of making a game that's profitable, like at some point, you've just got to call it like you see it and cut your losses. But Sony needs to take an L. They're just thinking of which one to take, delay or cancel. The thing is, they delay it for a year. That represents another $150 million of spend. Like, that's a hugely expensive delay. So now the game needs to do even better to be profitable, or to break even, much less be profitable. And so, like, what are we doing? We could delay it by that, And then it just raises the bar of what it needs to clear. And they have, a year to figure it out and to save the game and make it perform even better than it would have if it had launched prior to all the scandals and stuff. But I think the game needed to delay before the scandals too. It's not clear what you do. It really is not clear. It's really, really bizarre. And, I don't know the inner workings of the financials. I don't know all of that stuff that, they are privy to, but it's not good. Plus, any delay puts it in range of GTA 6, more damage. Well, there's that. It's also, the other thing is that Sony has other live service games that they need out in the next year. Like they have to put out the Horizon game, one of them, next year. They have to do it. They have a big Horizon MMO that they're working on. They have this other spin-off project from former Bungie devs that they have to put out. Like, they have a ton of stuff that they're working on that they need to put out sooner rather than later. And they don't want to stack them too close together because then it just cannibalizes it. So what are you going to do? Like, it's just bizarre. Fair Game $. Yeah, don't forget about Fair Game $. That's another one that's supposedly coming at some point in this period. Marathon is a hero shooter with no heroes. The characters are absolutely devoid of personality, literal shells. Compare that to the attractive characters in a game like Overwatch. Well, and even that's not even the core of the problem. It's just the broader problem is just, I think as a concept, a casual extraction shooter doesn't make sense. And I think a game this lacking in content as a premium product doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. Your use of attractive in Overwatch is concerning. Hey, man. We always knew that there were people out there that found those characters attractive. You never know.
He took my thing.